technology, CG stuff where you can do anything.
Yeah.
You can blow up an entire city, destroy New York or whatever, without actually destroying New York. With some areas of it.
Yeah.
Should be. Anyway. So it's, to me, what I find intriguing is I think that there are a lot of CG artists who will, I call them guys who live in their mother's basement with a computer, and they say, okay, well, I can create the illusion of blowing up this building. That looks pretty. You know what would even be better? I'll blow up this other one too. And then, wait, why not just blow up 3 or 4 of them? And suddenly the CG stuff takes over for the storytelling.
Yeah.
Somebody's interested in trying to make it bigger and better. And so I think that, that always has to be sort of controlled by the director and people like that who say, well, let's not go overboard so that we lose the audience. Make it seem possible.
Yeah.
Make it seem an experience you could experience.
Yeah. We're gonna do a Q&A. I want you guys to, if I ask for Q&A now, nobody's gonna raise their hand. So I want you guys to start thinking and have it ready for when we get to it. Well, we'll get to it. Just have it ready. You'll be the first
I'll
one.
get it ready.
But I wanted, since we're here at the Gamble House, you told us a little bit of a story about your experience here, location scouting, and this. Is there any stories you want to tell about filming here? I particularly, one of my favorite shots in the entire trilogy is the opening, not the opening shot, but it's an early shot in part 3, where it's Marty bringing Doc into the house, and it's just this wide shot of the Gamble House, and you guys use the Vista Glide to kind of do a couple passes so that you see the sun essentially rising in one shot, which is kind of impossible to, now that you can, like you said, you click, you do it on CGI, but at that time, can you tell us a little bit about that, or any other favorite story that you have about the Gamble House filming here?
Well, I was born and raised in Alhambra, which is just across the border of Pasadena, and to get across the border you need paperwork now, just to warn you. But Pasadena was always an iconic place. My mother would go shopping up here on Colorado. My father loved the history of Los Angeles. They came from Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, and my father always took us places. And one of the places we went, not infrequently, was the Gamble House. And it was fascinating to me because I got involved in creativity and architecture, and the architecture here with the brick and the posted beam and the pegs and all of that stuff. It's so iconic that it made a huge impression on me when I was even just a kid, 10, 12 years old, and over a period of time I visited several times, of course. So I was very pleased and delighted when they said Doc Brown's house happens to be the Gamble House. And I said, how did he afford that? No, I didn't. I wasn't that naive. So this particular house has always been such a great image of a time gone by. You look at it in the movie and you say, oh, that's a house or a building of the past, and Doc Brown lives in the past. So it was such a wise choice, I think, to choose this house as an image of where Doc Brown lived. And like I say, we then shot at the Blacker House also, the interiors, and it became, and I remember driving around that neighborhood when my father drove us, looking at all these old houses that he was fascinated by with, and he So it was a great experience to be able to shoot the night exterior of Marty arriving here at such an iconic place.
Whose idea was to do the shot like that, to do the multiple passes to get the sunrise?
Well, I had come from an interest in visual effects and so forth, so it was a relatively easy thing to say. Well, let's do this.
Yeah.
I can't take all the credit because, as I said, in this business, anybody who takes all the credit is really just lying.
Yeah, I came up with that quote. It was me. I did.
It was, yeah.
It was all me.
Yeah, well, it's worthy of you, I guess. So, anyway, it's, it's such a delight to see the house. I went online and I think I mentioned to somebody that this house is referred to the Back to the Future house very often on various websites, because that's the movie that made this iconic to the general public, as opposed to just those of us who live in Pasadena. I live 2 blocks the other side of Colorado, so I could have walked here,
Yeah.
but I didn't.
You're gonna walk back.
Yeah.
I'll take the first question. I think this gentleman here had the question. Yeah.
It's okay. You got a microphone or anything? Or
Somebody has a. I think somebody has a.
So
microphone.
I have a mic back here. I can talk to people. Here you go.
Cool, awesome, thank you. Hi, Dean.
Okay.
You're on.
It's funny because I do a podcast.
A little closer to your mouth.
A little closer.
I just want to say thank you on behalf of probably everyone in here. Like, Back to the Future literally is one of the greatest. Well, it is the greatest film we ever made. It's such a great screen. It's an indelible part of cinema, and we're 40 years into it now. So I just want to thank you for that. But also, one of my favourite things of all time is John Carpenter. So John Carpenter's like literally one of my heroes. Like Escape from New York, thing, Big Trouble in Little China. What my question is, or try to wrap around it, is you worked in that independent cinema with John Carpenter doing those films, and obviously they're very, very revered now as cult classics, and people love those films. But when you did Back to the Future, did you ever think to yourself, like, this is going to be a major hit? You obviously went on to do Jurassic Park, you did Roadhouse, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. You are literally my hero in cinematography. So to be here, to fly from the UK, to be right here, sat here, listening to your stories, it's one of the greatest things in the world. I never thought I'd be in the vicinity of someone that shot and films in a specific way that I think I'm shaking, because I just think what you've done to me as a person that loves film and been a cinephile, I think it's fantastic. And I just want to thank you. Actually, it's no real question, but sorry. So I do apologise, but it's just one of those things. Like when you're when I was 5 years old in 1990, and I first watched Back to the Future, that film, I can watch that every day of the week, and it will never get boring. I can watch Escape from New York; it will never ever get boring. I think it's the way you shot films that make it so indelible to people that are sat here right now. So I think we all should be thankful. Dean Cundey at the Gamble House in Pasadena. I just wanted to learn how to use the microphone. I ain't gonna sing, don't worry. But I just really want to thank you for everything you've done. That's it. You're a very important person to the industry, not only that, but for years going on. Like 40 years down the line, my daughter's going to grow up and probably will watch Back to the Future. I'm forced her to watch it. But she'll grow up and I'll pass away, but she'll say that film going on because the way you shot that film. So actually, if I can get a quick question in. I'm really sorry. So after Back to the Future came out, it was a major hit, especially with Spielberg, because you're upon that Amblin era. Did your career change, or how do your ideologies change from there? Because obviously you were working in independent cinema, then you got Back to the Future. That's something to have in your back pocket. Like, I want to know what that's like to have Back to the Future as your thing.
Well,
And to add to that question, if you can talk a little bit about the transition between part 1 and part 2, how that was different for you. It was a bigger film, more special effects. He's asking how did your life or how did your craft change from after part 1, but I'm also curious, how did you adapt to the sequels, you know?
Well, thank you for your comments, your observation of my, well, we can say career, but it's more than just a career. Career seems to be about having a job. Having been able to fulfill a dream, and then to apply this dream to the storytelling of various movies, and to find that they become successful, and not only successful, but like I said, I've been around the world to various countries, and there are a lot of people who have seen it, sometimes dubbed into their language, but it still tells a story. And I think that's, to me, that's the important aspect of what we do, is telling a story that touches people. And to do it in such a way that takes advantage of our human experiences, perceptions, how it happens and how we understand. And so I thank you for your observations, but
Really appreciate that. It's very much appreciated. Again, your cinema is in the echelons of
well,
best films of all time.
thank you.
So.
And I made all of those films completely by myself.
So modest.
So I think, thank you for that. I think he's expressed how we all feel. So anybody else?
Thank you as well, because you're really good at hosting this as well. So thank you. I'd like to meet you later.
Sure, yeah. So he's expressed our gratitude, like everybody else, just questions. Okay, we know we love Dean. Let's start right here.
Sure. All right. So as someone that grew up in Alhambra, young man in Alhambra, you were going to local theaters, and later at UCLA as a student under James Howe. Were there any influences as big on your career and how you develop and saw film, the same way that we love and appreciate Back to the Future? What was your Back to the Future growing up?
Well, I don't know if I had one Back to the Future. I had an awful lot of movies that taught me about telling the story and about following the dream and creating the dream for a lot of other people. So I think that for me to be able to find, one small example, I was at UCLA Film School, and the last semester before I was going to graduate, James Wong Howe, who was a very, very famous cinematographer starting in the silent period, but won 2 Academy Awards and so forth. He taught a class at UCLA. Now, he didn't come and lecture once or twice. 2 days a week, Tuesday, Thursday, I think, he would come and he would do a setup. We had a very small stage, and he would demonstrate how to light it to make it look like something. And then the next day he would, the Thursday would be a different room, just with the lighting and where the camera went. It was an amazing eye-opener for me that it wasn't just about working with this little 16mm camera at film school, but it was a professional who told you the thought process, the sculpting with light, the placement of the camera, selection of a lens, all of the stuff that was real. And so I looked at that, I think, and that was one of the things that made me go from what was I thought was going to be production design, architecture, to actually concentrating on cinematography, because I knew that that was the way people see the movie through the lens, through the camera, and through the lighting that creates the mood. So I think that was one of the iconic experiences in my early career, and I then went on to really sort of concentrate. I took any job I could get. I often tell film students, and I'll take any job you can get. I did some makeup to start with. I did, various little editing, all kinds of things. And I had friends at UCLA who said, "Oh, no. I'm going to be a producer. I'm not going to," and I would say, "Well, what about sweeping the editing room floor for oh, no, I'm gonna," and most of them have never done that because, you have to learn about everybody's job in order to be able to relate to them. And it's a very significant thing, I think, to do all these different jobs so that you understand when you talk to the grip, you know how heavy that stuff is or what he can actually do because you had to try to do it. So anyway, that's one of my main things, I think, was doing a lot of different jobs, taking any movie I could get, no matter how bad the script was, the performances and so forth. It gave you a chance to experiment with the storytelling and the techniques and the mechanics of what we did.
Thank you. Who else has a question? I just want to see hands for now. So these two, okay. I'm going to ask one of the questions I've been waiting to ask, and then I'll turn it back to you guys. I will say to what you were saying about, to me, your style has a grounded quality to it that kind of puts us in the world and makes us feel like, I feel Back to the Future is real. Like, one of the reasons I seek out going to these locations is because it feels like I could step through. It doesn't feel like it's a fantasy world. I love movies that are stylized and very highly, fantastical stuff, but there's something about that. And there's another film that you shot that I'm not going to say, but you can clearly see the difference between the first one and the sequel. And the movies are kind of the same, but the first one just feels real and scary and visceral. And the sequel is like, it's nice, same director, good job, but it doesn't have that same feeling. Anyways, that was just a comment. Huh?
Lost World sucks.
I like Lost World, but obviously, I think that's one of the clear things that when I talk to people about cinematography, that's one of the examples I give. I go, this, again, I don't want to say the movie out loud, but you watch these two movies and it's different. So that's just a comment. But one of the things I wanted to ask, and this is a question that somebody brought to me to ask you and Bob and Neil and all these people is, during these Back to the Future stuff, people ask a lot about Eric Stoltz, and I'm not going to ask about Eric Stoltz. I'm not going to ask about how it was shooting with him, none of that. What I am interested in is, what did you learn from those first 5 weeks that you then had to reshoot that made the movie better later? Because you had to go back and shoot a lot of stuff. Was there something you said, oh, now we're going to do it this way? My theory is that the movie is as good as it is because they had those extra 5 weeks and they got to redo a lot of stuff. But I do want to get your opinion of whether you think you learned anything from that first 5 weeks that you then had to reshoot and you made it better.
Well, what's interesting is that we did 5 weeks with Eric Stoltz. Over a period of time, as you're working on a movie, you refine your vision for that movie. Excuse me. And you develop a style that you think tells the story properly. Is it dark and moody? Is it bright and cheery? What kind of camera work? Is there a lot of moving shots and stuff? What was interesting is that when they finally decided to replace Marty, one of the things that I did, I talked to, what's his name, Spielberg.
Yeah.
I said to Stephen, okay, this is an unusual opportunity. We can go back and fix so much stuff and would look at the cut version, and then they would move the stuff with the original Marty. And so what should we do differently? And he said, don't change a thing. You guys are onto it. And I thought, oh, what better thing than to have somebody like Stephen say, oh, well, you know, you guys are doing okay. So it was encouragement not to say, well, that scene in the whatever was too dark, and also there's too much, you need more moving camera, and all of these things that could have been, we didn't have to do, because apparently with Bob's vision and my help, we were able to tell the story in a way that served the movie, and I think that's an important thing, you know, and of course you learn every time you go to dailies. Back in the day when it was the next day, because the film had to be processed and then printed, and then you had to go to a screening room. Stephen had his own, and you would go to the dailies and you would say, oh, that's good, or oh, that's not, I should have put another light back there, and you learn from that. So next time you put another light back there, or you don't use that light back there because it was too silly.
Okay. I'm gonna turn it back to you guys. Who was it that raised their hands earlier up here? Okay. So let's start from the back and then pass the mic forward. Whoever has their yeah. And let's try to do a little bit of a speed run. Like ask the question, Dean, you answer it. Two words. No, I'm just kidding, but yeah.
So during the presentation, you didn't talk about the sequels too much, but I'm curious, what was it like to shoot both part 2 and 3 back to back? What was that experience like? Was it a challenge?
You know, what's interesting is that the success of the first one, the studio said, well, when do you want to start the sequel? And we said, what do you mean sequel? It's a completely, you know, story in itself. No, you have to have a sequel. So Bob and Bob wrote a sequel. Fortunately, they were doing it because rather than bringing in some writer who didn't understand the dynamics and the characters and the interrelationship, but they were going to continue the story. And so they wrote the sequel. It was Back to the Future 2. And when they saw the script, the studio said, well, it's too long. You have to. So Bob said, well, okay, we'll cut this scene here, and we'll put, no wait, if we cut that scene, then, okay, I tell you what, we'll get rid of this character. No, that's, and Kathy Kennedy said, well, why don't you just cut it in half and make 2 and 3? And we looked at each other and said, yeah, you know what, that tells the whole story. And so between 2 and 3, I think I had 2 weeks off before we started prepping again. And it was continuous. And what was good about that is that, you know, you were working with exactly the same people on exactly the same movie. There was no conflict of styles or vision or whatever in any of the departments, you know, production design or whatever. So it was a great, an unusual, unique experience to do, you know. Now I think they sort of plan on that because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
Sort of.
We had a question over here somewhere. Yeah, right here in the
Yes.
house.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
I'm really interested because you really into architecture and production design. When you go through this house, it's a craftsman house, but it has a Asian flair to it. Right around the corners of Frank Lloyd Wright House. When you switched over to doing cinematography, do you have a little signature that's like you? Do you feel like is you that comes out? Like what is like your signature to it? Most architects put something into your house to show this is my design. You know, they'll always throw something in there. Do you have a signature that says, "Hey, I filmed this" when you film?
You know, that's interesting because there are people who have a signature style that they impose on a movie, and no matter what the movie is, you know, or they get typed in particular ones because that style worked, so it was bound to work in this rom-com or whatever it is. And I think my sometimes I've been looked at it as somebody who doesn't have a significant style. Because I think the style depends on the story you're telling, the director, the performances, you know, the locations, all of that. It's all about creating the style and the mood and the storytelling techniques that are for about that particular kind of film. And so a lot of times I like it when people say, "Oh, it looked good. Who did it?" You know, because that to me is, you know, the end result is what is telling the audience, you know, why they like the movie, as opposed to let's go see one of my movies because they like the soft light or something like that, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting because in terms of acting, if an actor does the same thing all the time, you kind of go, well, they're not a good actor; they're playing the same person. But we kind of want directors and cinematographers to have a similar style throughout. But in reality, when I was younger and I went to film school, it's like, yeah, you want that very visual, you know, signature. But now as I'm older, I go, no, it makes more sense to be a chameleon. You're serving the story. You're doing the thing that's best for the story, not what's best for you and your, you know, stuff. So I respect that too. I think over the years I've learned. The more I learn about your career, the more I realize that is such an important part of your work is that you serve the story. You don't serve your own like personal style. I'm gonna go ahead and call it with the questions because we have to get with the autographs. We're gonna run out of time. But
Let's one.
okay, one more, real quick though.
Quick ones. One's in your wheelhouse. The introduction of the DeLorean. Since I saw your sketches, was one of the great things. The truck wasn't wide enough to open the gold doors. So Doc would have had to driven it in there, sat there. There's no way he could have got in. That's one of the few things. How was that part of the process? And my other one as an engineer, why did they say gigawatt instead of gigawatt?
That's a good question. What's interesting is that they shot it with I can't remember. I think it's Doc who says it first, gigawatts, and it was about 2 or 3 days later that said, "What? Why did he say gigawatts? What do you mean?" Well, the term is gigawatt. Too late. So you know, it's a case of you know, be sure you do your research, even as an actor, you know.
But it worked out. It's a lot more iconic.
Yeah, it became a signature moment for Doc.
It's acceptable to say 1.21 gigawatts if it's that value now.
Yeah, you know, and hopefully, you know, most of the audience doesn't notice or just accepts it. Yeah.
Teacher.
I think that's a great question to end with because that's I want to ask Neil Canton that tomorrow. I think he would have a little bit as a producer. He's the one that has to go, oh no, we didn't do the research, you know. So last that if you're coming tomorrow or if anybody else is coming, think of questions like that for Neil. Producers are like cinematographers. People don't always know what they do. And so that's why I love talking to you guys, because I want everybody to understand what cinematographers and producers and that sort of stuff do. So thank you so much, Dean. It was getting to talk to you is one of my dreams. If I'm honest with you, I put all this together just so I can have a conversation with you. And so now, guys, if you can stay seated, we're going to have Dean and Tisha go down and set up the autograph signing stations. Please stay seated. That way, make room for them, and then we can go on downstairs. But thank you so much, Dean. It was such a pleasure.